And they quite often are even a little bit surprised or shocked to think that the meditation that they've previously been doing is they've been trying to get to a certain point with that meditation, but they have never been able to. So they get, like you say, to this plateau or this stuck point. Once they try this meditation, so usually with meditation, people are trying to get to a certain depth, and because of the technique that they're using, or the traditional approach, or the mantra, because that's, as I mentioned earlier, all of that is superficial horror, and what I would visually say is like a horizontal plane. It's only in the body do we get this vertical plane that is depth. And so once they come to us after 20 or 30 years of doing that, of doing their horizontal plane of meditation, and they go deeper, that's when they actually realize that it's not been what they've been doing that is the problem.
Hello and welcome to the Biohacker Podcast. I'm Azra Alagic, your host and founder of Biohacker. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach specializing in longevity for women, a health and wellness journalist, writer, corporate consultant, and a biohacking advocate. Biohacker is a space where we can explore ways to optimize our health to live well longer. Whether it's through improving our nutrition, exercising, cryotherapy, supplementation, technology, and more, I'll be bringing you information and interviews with the best longevity experts to help you understand what you can do to optimize your health, prevent disease, and slow down or even reverse the symptoms of aging by taking control of your unique bio-individuality. Want to know more? Let's dive in. Hey guys, before we jump into the next episode, I wanted to take a quick moment of your time to tell you about the next Live Well Longer retreat that I'll be co-hosting with Camilla Thompson. If you've been feeling the pull to pause, reset, and reconnect with the woman you're becoming, then this is your moment. Join us for the next Live Well Longer retreat, which will be held from the 1st to the 6th of May in 2026 at the beautiful Reviva Resort in Bali. This isn't just a holiday. It's a transformational experience designed to help you reset your biology, restore your balance, and reimagine what aging well truly means. Across 6 days, you'll immerse yourself in restorative practices, nourishing food, movement, workshops, deep rest, and soul-level connection with a community of like-minded women who are all committed to living well longer. It's the kind of retreat that stays with you long after you return home. The clarity, the shifts, the confidence, the reconnection to your healthiest, most grounded self. If you're ready to invest in your well-being and step into a new chapter feeling renewed and inspired, I'd love you to join us. Register your interest now at livewelllongerretreats.com. Spots are limited. Now on to the podcast. Today's conversation feels especially timely. I've got quite a number of friends that have experienced grief and trauma recently. And in the biohacking world, we talk a lot about optimization and longevity and better sleep, better focus, better hormones, better performance. But underneath all that is something far more fundamental, the state of your nervous system. Because if your body doesn't feel safe, there's no supplement, no protocol, no productivity hack where that it's going to land. So my guest today is Cate Zoltan, the founder of Quiet Retreats and a practitioner of body-based meditation and trauma-informed healing. Her work centers on something deceptively simple, slowing down, not as an escape, but as a way back into the body, back into safety, and back into ourselves. Cate, welcome. Your journey into this work has been deeply personal. What was the moment that you realized that traditional meditation and therapy weren't resonating with you? And how did that push you toward body-based meditation?
Well, actually, thank you for having me, and welcome everybody. And yeah, so the moment I realized that the traditional meditation wasn't going to work for me really was probably the first time I just attended a meditation, I guess, meeting with at a local hall in Melbourne. And I just realized after they'd given us a guided meditation and the comments from people afterwards on what had happened for them, I really didn't have the experience that a lot of the people in the room were having, and it just didn't resonate with me at all. And then I wasn't actually looking for a body-based meditation because at the time I didn't actually know the difference between the different types of meditation, and it's only actually since I went to a meditation retreat in Western Australia and met my current husband, that he was running the retreats, and it was actually his approach. He has actually developed this body-based approach to meditation. So, he was a monk for 7 years, and he was quite moving quite quickly and quite high up throughout that, uh, traditional system. And at a certain point, he realized that the system wasn't really doing what it was stating that it was meant to be doing. So he started questioning the actual hypocrisy of the religious side of that and started questioning the people who are in the system and questioning them pretty hard on why they were telling the people, the new people who were coming into the order, a different story to what they were actually living and what they were actually doing. So he was really questioning that hypocrisy of hierarchy and that aspect of it. And so much so that they actually threw him out. So they
Wow.
just didn't want to know about that. And I'm talking, threw him out on the street, all his clothes, everything. He was living as a monk. And yeah, yeah, literally threw him out. So he ended up developing the body mind connection over here in Western Australia back in the late 80s. Then that started when he was a monk. He started the process of understanding what pain in the body actually meant, and that if you actually sat with that pain and felt it, that it just becomes another sensation like sadness or happiness or grief. And so he felt his way through that, and that's how he started to understand this body mind connection. And and then he started once they threw him out of being a monk, then he opened a clinic for deep tissue massage because he had been an had studied osteopathy before that. And so then over time, he realized that these patterns that people were talking to him about, each time they would come into the clinic, he was massaging, say, a shoulder, then the person would start talking about a specific problem in their life. And once this pattern just kept coming through of people talking about uh, a similar pattern in their life of a problem or an issue, he realized that that body part holds a particular type of tension and memory that's not resolved throughout that person's life. And so he's massaging it out. And then he had very, very good success with that. And over time, as his clinic grew, people started asking him, we want to learn to meditate, but we don't know how. And he thought, well, I can teach you to meditate, but I'm not going to teach you how to meditate like a yogi monk. So I'll have to develop a new type of meditation, which, because of his understanding of the body mind connection, he really connected that together and turned it into a meditation as well. So yeah, so and then when I actually so bringing coming all the way back to when I went to that first, meditation retreat of his in the Perth Hills, uh, I just it was literally the first day I think I sat down, and as soon as he started speaking, it just resonated so strongly with me. My whole system just dropped, and I was sitting there and thinking, wow, all of these little pieces of information that I've read in magazines and ideas and beliefs and I'd read it, I'd read some Buddhist books as well and studied, quite intensively these meditative traditional meditations. And so there was always a conflict of information or a contradiction. I could always see through the contradictions of what they were talking about. And it wasn't until I sat on the retreat that with Matthew that all those little pieces of information that were open-ended and just unfinished, it's like all of that just got settled into my system and like, okay, this is the end of the question related to those contradictions. He just answered all of those. And that's how it really resonated with me, and that's exactly how I understood then that this body-based meditation is completely different to the traditional ones.
So you talk about meditation starting in the body, not in the mind. Can you unpack that distinction a little bit more for our listeners? Because look, I'm the worst meditator in the world, and I'll fess up about that straight away. For me, it's always been a work in progress, and I try to do it, and I'm still very much a student and still trying to learn to meditate effectively. And I try to meditate at least 10 minutes a day. I think I've got such a busy mind that I struggle to shut that down, and I've learned recently that it's not necessarily about shutting it down, but really just learning to be in stillness and observing those thoughts that keep coming through. But explain the difference between working with the body as opposed to focusing on breath work and the mind.
Yes. So with the body-based meditation, you're actually sitting with the feelings and and the sensations that come up in your body. So it's coming you're coming from the inside out rather than the outside in. So with the traditional approach to meditation, like mindfulness, the Vipassana, mantras, visualization, breathwork. All of this is an addition to yourself, and it all comes from what we call a thought based approach. And because thought is actually superficial by nature, it's the way I liken it is it's like a horizontal plane and it can just go on and on and on and on. Thought you can just it's endless, it never stops. And if you're giving it power by with these with traditional approaches and technique based approaches and the thought based approaches that I mentioned, if you're using thought, you're just literally adding fuel to the fire. So if you're using thought, you're just adding thought to thought to thought, and it's just this endless accumulation of thought, if you like, which creates a state. Whereas if you're using a body based approach, which is coming back to the feelings and the sensations in your body, then what's happening is you're just getting in touch with how you actually feel that day. So, like you would go to the gym and you would warm up and you would, do a few air squats and feel how your legs actually feel how stiff your back is. You go into the gym trying to suss out whether you're basically going to injure yourself or whether you're feeling strong, or you go in trying to understand how you actually feel in that moment. It's the same with body-based meditation, but you're there's no goal. You're not worried about the thoughts. Your thoughts just you just let them pass through because you know that they're endless and there's no point giving them in any importance because they can be anything that they or you choose them to be. And as
Yeah.
soon as you give the thoughts that importance, then you actually give them the energy that they are demanding. So from this perspective, the body-based meditation, you're really just sitting still and feeling any sensations that arise in the body. And that's what your meditation is, because that's how you're actually feeling deep in your system during that period of sitting still. And that's how you are that day. So basically that's the difference. Yeah, I hope that's clear. Come
See,
back with any more questions if it's not.
yeah. So is it about, do you go through the body in a particular way, or is it just about sitting there in a holistic way and observing the sensations in the body? Or do you, because I've done other meditations before where you might start from the feet and work your way up to the top of the head, or start from the top of the head and work your way down. Is there a particular pattern of meditating with the body in that way?
Yeah, so what you've just described again is coming from thought because you've got a goal to start with. I'm okay, I'm going to start with the feet and I'm kind of going to become aware of every aspect of my body. You're also as soon as you put awareness into it, then it's that again is thought. So it's not you're that there's and what I mean by thought and what we see as the problem with meditation of in that way with these techniques is that what happens is it creates a little bit of disconnect between you as a body and your thinking process. And so the I guess the aim is really to feel it. Okay, so the easiest way to explain it probably is if you go and have a hot bath, you're standing on the outside of the bath and you're looking at that bath and you know what it's going to feel like. You're preparing this is going to be a lovely bath. I hope it's not too hot. And you can think about what that bath is going to bring to you in terms of a feeling. But you're still only thinking about it. You're not actually experiencing it. Then once you get into the bath, then you're actually feeling it and you're fully immersed in that experience. So that's that is
Right.
the difference between a technique and a thought-based or traditional type meditation to a body-based meditation. You become entirely 100% the experience, and then there is no goal with this meditation. The goal is just to see how you are feeling that in that particular moment. And if any sensations or feelings arise in those moments of when you're sitting, the other distinction too we have is this is really a meditation that people prefer to do for longer periods. So we
Yes, because
don't,
that was gonna be my next question was,
yeah,
how long?
most people don't sit for, say, 10 minutes a day. Generally, our students sit for at least an hour a day. And quite often, they tell us, even just through using our app, that they've been sitting for 2.5 hours, up to 3 hours a day. And that's because they want to. And also because what happens once you start uh, getting back fully in touch with your body, with the organism that you are and the sensations and feelings that arise from that body of yours, there's a profound relief that comes with that. And it's not like it's addictive, it's just that you know that that's what your body and your system is wanting, and you like to give that to yourself. So you're coming from a completely different angle. You're not doing this for a reason. You're not doing it because it makes you feel better, because quite often all it does is you end up feeling quite distressed, especially in the early days or in the early years. And the reason for that is because, as you know, we live very, very busy lives where it's very difficult nowadays to digest and process and take in all of that information. It's actually quite harmful for your system because it is an overload and it is too much. So it is quite painful. So when you sit, quite often there's a lot of distress, pain, uh, maybe annoyance, and just that overloaded feeling that we have nowadays due to the technology, really. As you're feeling from your system and from the inside out, you're not actually adding anything to your system. You're actually letting your system relax and process that information. And in that way, because you're feeling it, feelings are meant to be resolved or feelings are meant to be felt. So feelings resolve when you feel them. And by sitting with this particular meditation, you actually feel those feelings to their end and they resolve, and then you can move on. And that's how you can keep moving on and keep up with yourself throughout the whole of your life. And this is why I often say it's a longevity-based meditation, really, because it's giving you the resolution that you need on a day-by-day basis to allow you to continue to keep up with your life as your life is progressing, rather than at the moment, everybody's just living until, they're just going as hard as they can and working hard or, working fast, taking in as much information. By the time they get to 60, 65, they're so exhausted, so broken because they've in some way harmed themselves so much that they can't recover from that. But with this particular type of meditation, you just keep up with yourself. And
Mhm.
as you get better and better at keeping up with yourself, you actually, what happens is the sensitivity to yourself changes. So you end up not actually harming yourself anywhere near as much as you normally would. You physically can't do it because you're so in touch with yourself and your system and the way you feel that day, that to override yourself, that is going to harm or damage you. So you can't.
Mm.
So it's a really interesting approach.
Yeah, it is. But I just comes to mind that when you were just explaining there about sitting in your body and for an hour, 2, 3 hours, a lot of people do sometimes feel stuck or overwhelmed in their meditation practice. And particularly if you're having to confront feelings or pain or trauma, that can be quite overwhelming. What are the most common barriers that you see, and how does grounding in the body in that way really help to overcome that?
What we've found is that, we've had a lot of people come to us as well who've been meditating for, say, 50, 30, 20 years. And when they come and do this particular natural meditation, we call it, just so that you know, um, when they come and do natural meditation, they're amazed at the level of depth that they can get that, with this meditation. And they're quite often even a little bit surprised or shocked to think that the meditation that they've previously been doing is they've been trying to get to a certain point with that meditation, but they have never been able to. So they get, like you say, to this plateau or this stuck point. And once they try this meditation, because it's the so with usually with meditation, people are trying to get to a certain depth. And because of the technique that they're using or the traditional approach or the mantra, because that's, as I mentioned earlier, all of that is superficial horror and what I would visually say is like a horizontal plane. It's only in the body do we get this vertical plane that is depth. And so once they come to us after 20 or 30 years of doing their horizontal plane of meditation and they go deeper, that's when they actually realize that it's not been what they've been doing that is the problem. It's the actual approach that has been the problem. And so straight away they're not stuck anymore. With this particular approach of meditation, we don't find people get stuck. They may get a little bit stuck in if some trauma or pain is coming up and their thinking becomes a little bit more confused because of the physical trauma that has happened to them. And so what we find is we have a community around us of people, and we do day sits, and we all get online, and then Matthew gives a talk, and this is it's the understanding of the confusion is what makes people stuck in this meditation, whereas with the other approaches it's more of a it's more the thought level can't allow them to get the understanding, if that
Mm,
makes sense. Does
yeah.
that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I think that I know personally, I still struggle with that thought process.
Mm.
But I also am aware that there are many high achieving women that really pride themselves on being resilient. And I know that you focus a lot on ensuring that we have that nervous system reset so that we're not having that overdrive. So we're not going to end up one of those 60, 70, 80-year-olds you were describing
Mm,
before that feels so
yeah.
burnt out by the time you get to the end because you actually have been pushing so hard and working so hard. How do you distinguish between true resilience and nervous system overdrive?
Well, again, for me, because I've been doing this meditation for so long, it always just really comes back to how I'm feeling in my body on a particular day, but also the understanding of whether this is going to physically harm my system if I just keep pushing and driving. It's a topic I've actually been going through over the last, I would say, year, really,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I was at a burnout stage about a year ago. And it was because of a drive in me that I was pushing, pushing, trying to get the business happening, but not in a realistic way. And so my thinking was pushing me to continue with this, with a particular project that we're working on, and not looking at the reality of what damage that was doing to me, but also not looking at the uh, reality of where that was going to take me. So in the end, the project actually fell over.
Mhm.
We restarted in another way, but uh, at the time, I was not wanting to think that that was, going to be a problem. I thought, "Oh, I'll just pick it back up and we'll continue on." But then I realized how burnt out I was from this drive that was continuously pushing. And in the end, I actually felt a relief when the project came to an end, but then the drive kicked back in. And then I was able to, instead of continue with going and listening to that drive, I was able to actually, because there was no project anymore, I was able to just listen to my body and listen to the thinking patterns, if you like, behind that drive, and really see them for what they were. And then that resolves. And then I was able to undo the confusion that was driving me to want to continue with the project. So I was able to then, because the project had come to a stop, because that's one of the best things to do in life. If you think that there's a problem somewhere, or you want to find out if there's something's doing you harm, then stop it and see if you can actually stop it. And then you straight away get in touch with the drive, and then that drive is what's really showing you what's actually pushing an aspect of yourself, rather than, if you compare that to something that you're just doing because you love doing it, and it's something that you can drop or pick up at any point and it's not a problem. If you compare those two behaviors, then yeah, that's when you really find out where you're at. So yeah, so
Mm.
I had that opportunity to work through that drive and realize where I was coming from, because I think the important thing here is that where you're coming from is really the basis of life and the basis of whether you can actually harm yourself or not.
Yeah, because I wonder whether people use that drive sometimes to mask other things, whether it's pain, whether it's unresolved trauma, or anything else. Have you found that in your retreats that you guys hold, that sometimes people do use it to mask those things?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Eh, what find and see a lot is what people think is driving them, and what they think that the reasons why they're doing things in their lives is generally not what they think. When they get below that superficial surface of understanding that the current understanding they've got and drop further and deeper into their body and their system, then the body starts actually talking to you quite differently. It's that when your body's talking to you, it's that quiet, it's that really it's in the background. It's like a quiet voice that you often hear, especially if you meet somebody for the first time, or you're in a business meeting and you know something's not right and something's in the background, just sort of not loud. It's not a loud voice, but it's a quiet voice, but you know that gut feeling, that gut intuition when you write, it's more like that. And because we're so busy and caught up in this superficial thought world, it's very hard for people to understand where they're coming from and to understand what's driving them. And quite often, it turns out that there is uh, suppressed memory, or just things that they've forgotten, or trauma from either an accident or some physical tension that has been held in their body, that is that drive that's pushing them, because they're avoiding or distracting, or they've never been taught. Most of the time people haven't actually been taught how to
No.
feel their feelings.
Mm.
So it's not a there's nothing good or bad about the way the people are approaching themselves. This approach has just never got out enough to become, mainstream, so people help
Mm.
each other through these times rather than help them at the moment. The way the world's geared up is it's all around avoiding yourself, distracting from yourself, don't feel your feelings, drug it out, cut it out, do whatever you
Yeah.
want, but just do not go near those feelings. So when people actually do get back in touch with those feelings, and they do resolve the superficial stuff, then the feelings they find that have been left through either, harmful events, or just distressful events, or like even a car accident, for instance, the feelings of shock and harm that has happened in the body, even in a car accident, and then if you go and have surgery, or you've got a broken leg, then there's a certain level of injury and pain that comes with harm that's happened in that way. And if you can't resolve that, or if you don't know how to resolve that in your body, then it just gets lodged there.
Mm.
And that tension actually creates a certain type of feeling in that particular area of your body. And if you're unable to resolve that, then that feeling is what drives you. Because if you think about, yeah, so that's literally what is driving you day by day. Because if you think about the way we work as humans, we're entirely 100% we run on feelings. So if you're hungry, you go and eat. If you're
Uh,
cold, you go and put a jumper on. If you don't want to do a job at work during the day because you don't feel like doing it, I just said it, you don't feel like doing it. So you avoid it, you distract, you procrastinate, you do anything but go near that particular feeling. And that's what we're doing all day, every day. So the more you understand yourself, the more you understand your feelings, the more comfortable you become in yourself, the more comfortable you become with any feeling that comes up. If you've got a pain in your elbow and you're not afraid of it, imagine how you can operate if you're not avoiding and distracting and swerving around that feeling all day. Then your productivity, your focus, your attention, everything is just it's direct then. So it's
yeah.
a yeah, it's a very different way.
Yeah, you and I have spoken previously about how people tend to not listen to their bodies, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about as well, because I think we've definitely forgotten how to do that. I was looking at some statistics this morning in preparation for our chat today around trauma, and the World Health Organization cites that around 70% of people worldwide will experience at least one potentially traumatic event in their lifetime. That's up to 75% in Australia. And then in a recent study conducted by the University of Sydney, around 42% of Australian adults experience childhood trauma. So we know that trauma can alter brain structure, immune responses, stress regulation systems. For someone, though, who has tried traditional meditation and found it activating or even distressing, could that be trauma surfacing? Because I do wonder whether that's why some people avoid stopping and avoid listening and avoid being still because they are trying, they're scared to face that trauma. They're scared to feel that again, perhaps, or to feel it for the first time even because they've bottled it up right from the get-go. Your thoughts on this?
When we've got trauma, depending on the event, but because your system actually remembers an event and a harmful event or a distressful event, the only way the body understands is through feeling, really. We're like a big sponge and we're just looking out at the world. All the information comes in and it comes into our system. We're this big sponge. And so we're just, yeah, all the information is just coming in. And that's how we process and understand life. So when we go through a harmful or traumatic event, a lot of the feelings that we feel during those events, like fear or distress, they're not nice feelings to feel. So, but they're still stuck in the system, in your body system. So when the feeling actually is trying to be felt, a feeling can only be in your system. The feeling that's in your system will come out the same way it went in, if that makes sense. So if you've had a distressful event where there's been a lot of fear involved, then that fear from that event is coming out, trying to be resolved. As I mentioned before, feelings want to be felt, they're there to be felt, and once they are felt, they get resolved. But as they come back out or are trying to come back out, that's the only language that feeling can show you. So you're feeling a fear of feeling your feelings, but in actual fact, the fear is a memory of the event that actually the fear that was in the actual event that happened at the time. So take, for example, we'll go back to a car accident again. If you're stuck in a car and the car might have rolled and you're upside down and you're stuck with the seatbelt on, you don't know how you're going to get help. There's going to be a lot of fear in an event like that. So if and then say 2 years later, 3 years later, you're still not fully resolved or you're still not over that car accident, even though you've healed all the physical injury, but there's still a fear in you from that particular event. You may not connect that it's from that particular event, but as that if there's a certain level of fear, like as soon as you get in a car, then you're not actually, or if you've got to go out and drive again and and there's still this fear that is related to cars and driving, then you're not actually over that event. So what's happening in there is there's a few different parts to resolving pain fully, and the psychological side of that is also, even though it is feels psychological because it's just a thought pattern of I'm scared when I get in the car since that event, that is still also just a feeling in your body. And if you can understand that you can actually feel that fear, but not have to act on it. And this is why the understanding the depth of feeling in your body is so important in this type of meditation, because you can get a little confused if you don't know what the feelings are in your body. And also if you what we also learn too is how to not connect all of your feelings with what is going on in your life now. So coming back to the car accident, if there's a feeling of fear in your system when you step into the car, instead of just instantly connecting that fear with driving, but stay with the fear, don't allow any story to come in, and just stop any thoughts extra to being scared. Then you're able to get back in touch with the feeling of the fear, and
Mhm.
then it's got a chance to resolve.
No, that made total sense. So there are different types of fear, and so you've used the example of a car accident, but would you agree that there are degrees of fear? And for somebody perhaps that's experienced something that could be perceived as a little bit more significant, like perhaps some sort of childhood trauma, whether it's domestic violence, sexual abuse, whatever it might be, as opposed to being in a childhood trauma, sorry, a car accident. Is trauma trauma and fear fear, or do you think there are degrees of trauma and degrees of fear and that they should be tackled differently?
Yeah, I definitely think that there are different levels, definitely. There are most definitely different levels of trauma. There's most definitely different types of fear, but to resolve all of them, it comes back to exactly the same thing. You
Yeah,
just
right.
need to feel it.
Mhm.
But what I will say is that, especially with feelings that come from childhood trauma and sexual abuse, I would say that are definitely next level. Like,
Mhm.
they would have to be one of the most extreme feelings to feel, but you can feel them. They're a lot more complicated because there is a lot more reaction, there is a lot more ideas, there is a lot more belief and shame and distrust. Uh, there's so much more that encapsulates, if you like, and makes confusion of the actual feeling. So, feelings are feelings. They're all the same, whether you're feeling sadness, grief, happiness, anger, distress. They're all ultimately, there's just a pure feeling that is beneath the story, or what we would call the reaction to that feeling. So when you get down to the actual pure feeling, they're all, it's all just a sensation, but it's the story that surrounds that feeling. It's the ideas. So when you're abused as a child, you're treated so badly that whether the person says it or not, that impression is what is left with you. And that's the impression that you take on, and you grow up thinking that, well, I'm just nothing. I'm not worth anything. If people treat me that way, then I'm obviously don't have any value. So it's all of those belief systems, and that's what makes it hard to feel feelings. It's not the actual feeling itself, it's all of this thought construction, all the reaction, all the story, all these underlying beliefs that are very hard to understand, actually, when you grow up with that from such a young age. It becomes so familiar to you that it's very hard to recognize that that's how you think about yourself. And that's why interacting with people and staying connected with people and having the right people in your life who can point things out like that to you is really, really beneficial, because the more you can break down those beliefs and systems, or of ideas about yourself, the closer you're getting actually to the raw feeling and that pure feeling, and then you're able to resolve it. So it's a big process. I'm not it can be done, and we help people resolve childhood sexual trauma regularly on retreats. It's you can't do it overnight. I'm not saying there's
Mm,
no quick fix to it. It's because
yeah.
it is so complex. Yeah, in answer to your question, yes, there's degrees of fear, there's degrees of trauma, but the thing is that it ultimately comes back to feeling those feelings and not believing in the stories that are attached to those feelings and not acting on those stories and those reactions and the ideas and beliefs. So it really comes down to challenging yourself and questioning, are those thoughts real? Is that the reality of me? Or is that just a story that I tell myself day after day after day?
And so many of us do tell ourselves those stories day after day after day. Your retreats do emphasize silence and stillness, and you've spoken a lot about the way to break through some of this trauma is about allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling. Feel the fear, feel the grief, whatever it might be, feel the pain. How do you keep your retreat attendees safe? How do you ensure that they don't tip over the edge, so to speak, as a result of feeling traumatized or re-traumatized by having to sit there and feel that pain and confront what's happened and try to recreate the story for themselves moving forward so that they are not defining themselves by that particular traumatic event anymore?
Yeah, so on the retreats, we're very particular where we hold the retreat. We don't allow anybody who's not attending the retreat to enter into that environment at all. I'm like the gatekeeper, so anybody, there's never any gardeners or maintenance or anything that the people attending the retreat have to deal with. And we provide everything for them so they don't have to think about anything apart from themselves. So that gives them the opportunity to literally fall apart. And if they do fall apart, well, in our world, that's a good thing
Mm,
because they can then start to see the they can then start to see where they're really at rather than the pretense of what the facade that they show the world.
mm,
And when you come back to that point or when they understand how they're really feeling beneath all of that facade, then that's when the work starts really. Another aspect of allowing them or keeping them safe is that there's with the silence, there's no interaction with anybody else apart from Matthew or myself or other members of our team. So because we don't have any judgment over doesn't matter what feeling or what that person's doing, there's no judgment on retreat. And without that interaction of talk or eye contact, you're automatically in a space where you eventually realize it doesn't matter whether if I don't do my hair this morning, then it doesn't matter because nobody can say anything anyway, and nobody's looking at me anyway. So
That's a relief.
yeah, so that's a relief in itself. So yeah, so there's many aspects of it that create this safe, judgmental, free environment. But the other thing I would say too is that because we've been dealing with this for so long, we usually pick up before it gets to a point where it becomes destructive for the person. We usually step in before that point, and
Mhm,
also because of the understanding of the stories and the reaction that I just talked about previously, because our understanding of that is so clear, then we're able to help the person get through that at the fastest speed possible so that they're if they do turn into get too reactionary, we can help them see through the reaction and again just get back to the feelings in their body because ultimately once you get in touch with those feelings that you've been so afraid of for years, you actually feel really good about yourself. You feel really proud that you've been able to get through that, that
yeah.
you've actually been able to face those feelings. And then you realize also that they're not the big bad boogeyman that you thought that they were anyway. That's just all huff and puff. It's like a bark without the bite.
Yeah, yeah. It is amazing how you do create the stories in your head. I know that I certainly did that as a result of my childhood trauma that I went through, and I carried that for so many years, and it wasn't probably until, I think, in my early 30s that I actually faced it and did a lot of work on myself at that point in time to be able to stop carrying that with me into my future and stop allowing that to define me and stop
Mm,
feeling the pain and stop feeling the burden of that trauma that I experienced, and also learn to forgive the people that did that to me as well. And I've spoken about it previously, and I grew up in a situation where I experienced domestic violence and was also sexually abused by a family relative as well as a child. And it's not until you grow up that you realize how wrong that is, I think,
mm.
when you become an adult. But as a child, you know that something is wrong. You know that it's not quite right, but it's not until you become older, well, for me anyway, that I felt that, hang on a minute, that this is something that was 100% wrong, and that's something that I really needed to face and to really dig down into and understand why it was making me the person that I was at that time. Why was I so angry? Why was I feeling such overwhelm all the time? And it was because I was masking that through sheer busyness in life. So this really resonates with me, because I've been through that, and I understand the importance of doing the work and stopping and listening and really digging down into those feelings. But let's talk about grief, because that's why I was asking before about different types of feelings and different types of trauma. Grief seems to be one that's really particularly hard to let go of sometimes. I've seen a number of people around me that really struggle to move forward from a loss in their life. What has been your experience in helping people with grief, and how can you advise our listeners to be able to step through that?
Well, with grief, because the person who has recently died is not there anymore, while they're alive, there's actually an understanding that if you needed to resolve certain issues with that person, that you could. But when that person isn't alive anymore, then that option's over. That option's gone. So once they've died, as soon as you realize that, then all of that option to resolve the issues that you have between each other is gone. So what you're then left with is all the unresolved stuff that you've had going on between that person for your life, that you're just left with it. So it's a lot harder to resolve something, like a problem or an issue that you've had with a person without them being there, because it's the response from that person that you're looking for to ha- give feedback to your own person so that you can then move on. But when that's taken away, then you're literally left with all of those unresolved feelings, and that's hard. So that's what that feeling of loss is really. That right? I mean, you probably don't understand that consciously, but your body understands that, and so whatever's unresolved, it's off the table now with them. It's
Mm,
entirely up to you. All of that is on you now to resolve it without the input from them. So that's a big part of grief. And then the other thing that happens with grief too is, especially if it's like a shocking or a surprise or a sudden death, then first you've got the actual shock of that, which is quite traumatic in itself. Obviously we can get over shock, but it's just part of the feeling of grief. And the other aspect of that is that if it's a shock or you didn't want it to happen, or if it's a lifelong partner and now you have to live without that person, there's a level of uh there's a level well, the level of grief in that is that there's a story that comes with it. So that story is an addition to the actual feeling that has come from that person dying. So if you just feel the feelings of that person not being there anymore and the loss and the sadness and the upset, if you just feel those feelings without adding any story to it, without, complaining that they shouldn't have died, why should this happen? I should have done something different. It's my fault that they're dead. If you can stop all of these stories, all these reactions, all these reasons for why it needs to be different, then that also allows you to heal the grief a lot faster. I know it probably would take time for you to understand that. Grief, in my experience, if there hasn't been a lot of harm happened between you and that other person, it's like with family members, or say, for instance, your family, if somebody in your family dies and you haven't dealt with all those feelings of abuse from that family member when they die, then that's the impact that hits you when they die.
Mm.
So, but if you've been working through that as have been, uh, then those feelings of loss when that person dies, it won't hit you so hard because you've dealt with a lot of it while they've been alive, I imagine. So, yeah,
Mm.
I hope that makes sense. So depending on the level of unresolved issues with that the particular person who's died will depend on the ease or the difficulty of resolving the grief.
Mm. What about dealing with triggers? Can the meditation approach that you and Matthew share, can that help people who are trying to go through their trauma or their grief, but are triggered on a daily basis, a weekly basis, whatever it might be? I know there's some people around me that tend to get triggered as a result of a loss in their life. Can this type of meditation support, I suppose, dampening those triggers down?
Yeah, definitely, because always triggers and reactions, to me, they're all the same thing.
Mhm.
Uh, they're always an opportunity for you to go a little bit deeper. A trigger is always an opportunity for you to understand more about yourself, to understand why that trigger is there, to also get back in touch with the feeling that is behind that trigger. So this particular type of meditation is very good with that one. So if you're triggered from being particularly related to grief, then yeah, I would definitely suggest this meditation because it will keep you in touch with whatever feeling is trying to be resolved, and whatever distress. And this particular type of meditation. It really is like elite self-development, if you like,
That
because it it's really gets to the cause and the root cause and really, really rapidly. So the way that most people who've meditated with us for years or even right from the beginning, they just find themselves in the way that they move through life. They're just so much there's so much more ease and so much more speed, I suppose, not in a good or bad way, but just the efficiency of the way that you resolve and keep resolving things and learn about yourself and change and adapt and shift through life. It's pretty amazing, really. And that's purely just because you're not afraid of your feelings. You're not afraid to go near your feelings. So everything just then becomes direct. Everything comes uh very, I guess, focused on looking for the solution or moving through a particular feeling so that you can, I guess, not feel better, but just feel more at ease in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. In your experience, how does unresolved trauma show up in the body itself in terms of the symptoms? Because from what I've seen in the work that I do, it certainly shows up in a multitude of ways. What have you seen show up?
Yeah, it shows up as like chronic pains. It'll show up as a particular illness that it doesn't matter which doctor you go to, they can't figure out what the problem is. It'll show up as a pain that if you take drugs, it has no difference. It shows up really as it'll show up as as an anxiety attack. It'll show up as a behavior that you just can't stop, a compulsive behavior, like, like OCD, or it'll show up in as addiction. Addictions are really, are most of the time we've found, related back to a particular trauma. It shows up really as a harmful behavior that you, like I say, that you just can't stop. It'll shows up as depression. It shows up in so many different ways. It depends on the actual trauma itself. But, yeah, chronic pains and illnesses and things that just are not able to get resolved. Usually, I guess the theme is, behaviors or illnesses that you just can't get an answer for. They usually come back to trauma.
Yeah. Mm. Gives people a lot to think about, doesn't it?
It does. Well, there's a lot of trauma in the world, honestly. I
Oh,
mean, you've just read out the statistics, but
yeah. I was quite
it
surprised by those statistics that they were so high. I was like, "What? 7%?
yeah,
That's crazy." Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What's one practical step that our listeners can take right now to begin connecting with their body and emotions more deeply?
I would say really to sit still and, I mean, you don't even have to sit, you can lie. And it doesn't even have to be still, but just give yourself some space without music, without the TV, without a podcast on, without a book. Just go and lie on the couch and just do nothing and just
Yeah.
in a quiet, natural environment and just let yourself be. That would be, yeah, I think that would probably be the first step, most definitely.
That's really great advice because I know so many people who think that stopping, but still having some sort of peripheral noise, whether it's the TV going in the background, even though they might be lying there on the couch with their eyes closed, or having some earpods in their ears and they're listening to a podcast or music, that's stopping and being still. But you've still got noise going on and this chatter that's going on in your head. So it's not complete stillness, is it?
No, it's still distraction and it's still allowing your system to be drawn away from itself. So
Yeah.
sitting still or just lying still, and doesn't even really have to be still, but nature, a walk in nature, but with a quiet approach rather than, okay, I'm going for a walk to get fit and I'm going to take in the nature. Just go with no goal and no expectation, and allow yourself and give yourself permission to just do nothing.
That's one of my favorites is to just sit out in nature and just do nothing. I think it's a really great way to do it. All right, just finally, what does it mean to you to live well longer?
Well, I think there's a lot you can do to add and take supplements and eat well and exercise and do all the 5 longevity pillars, sleep well and all of that. But one that I think is missing is to understand how to stop harming yourself. And by that I also mean very much so on a thought level, on a mental level, like how are you harming yourself in the way that you think about yourself? Or how are you harming yourself by continuously thinking when it's not really necessary? How are you harming yourself by undermining and not allowing yourself to be who you fully are? So that would, and I think to me that has a lot bigger impact on your body and your health than people give it credit for. I think that I treat the mental and the physical as one. And so if your thinking is unhealthy, then the body is going to be unhealthy. So yeah, that's my take on wellness. It's
Yeah.
got to be both. There's no disconnect,
Mm.
and that's 100% my experience. And yeah, it's the way I live, and I think if more people paid attention to the quality of their thoughts rather than the quantity of their thoughts, then their health would improve dramatically.
Wise words. Kate, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great chatting.
Yeah, it's been lovely being here. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's a wrap for today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you'd like to learn more about biohacking, go ahead and sign up on my website at www.biohack-her.com to get a free copy of my 5 top biohacks to get you kick-started. While you're there, you can also check out my blog page for more tips on biohacking. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on Apple, Spotify, and Google Play. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like us to talk to in particular, and we'll endeavour to get them on the podcast. Until next time, remember to live well longer.